Hello, and welcome to Horror Rewind. This is Kelly Florence, and our guest co-host this week,
Nathan Payne. Hello.
Hello, welcome. It is actually warm in Duluth, which is amazing because...
Kind of.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess it's not warm today, but yesterday I was like, what is this horror? It was like 78. I guess it got to 82. But that's really hot. It did end up
getting that high?
Yeah.
I know tomorrow it's supposed to be like 85.
Oh my god.
And today the high is 46.
That's okay with me. I don't know.
I know. I was just saying yesterday on the internet that I can function between like 65 and 72.
Yes.
Anything beyond that, I feel like I'm dying.
Where in the world, I wonder, like, is always that temperature? Because that would be a good place.
Central California.
Oh, really?
Along the beach, yeah. We went there a few summers ago, and my friend said that it's like rarely over 75, and I was like, this is what I want.
That is nice.
And in the summer we went and we were in sweatshirts, like it was cold.
Oh.
It was nice.
So, we watched Creepshow this week. It's on Shudder, which it just recently came to Shudder because
they added a bunch of Stephen King.
Yeah, which is amazing. I saw this movie when I was probably too young to see it, but hence my childhood. It was in 1982, 70% on Rotten Tomatoes, written by Stephen King, directed by George Romero. What's your history with this movie?
I first watched it probably in like 7th or 8th grade. I had this friend, I would always go over to his house, and his mom had tons of scary movies, so that was kind of how I watched a lot of them. But Creepshow, yeah, I watched it before I knew who George Romero was, or like who I really knew Stephen King was. It's always kind of stuck with me, and I've always been a huge fan of like EC comics,
yes,
and anthology horror in general. So
that's
I think
awesome.
It's very high up on my list of those movies.
I was wondering if you had comic books, like scary comic books, or were you not allowed?
Funny story, I actually wrote about that. I was not allowed. I was really into Tales from the Crypt Keeper, the Saturday morning cartoon, and then I learned that there was a live action version, Tales from the Crypt, and then I learned that my dad had a bunch of Tales from the Crypt comics, and they were up in the attic of our garage, and I found them, and he did not want me to have them. He said they were terrible, and I put them in my bag, and he found them and burned them.
Oh my gosh!
So no, I was not allowed.
Wow. The first thing I wrote down is because of this opening scene. I was like,
yeah, it was a huge thing.
I bet this was a similar experience that you had.
I did write that, and I also wrote that I didn't want to murder my family.
Yes.
Or like summon a ghost.
Right. That's funny. I wrote down, I had the opposite of this boy's experience because my dad like sought out and shared horror with me because he knew that I loved it. And so the funny thing is, in this rewatch, I haven't seen this again in a long time, but apparently he fast-forwarded through the first one because there was so much swearing, and I don't remember the first one.
Yeah, because the kid was... You mean the first...
Like the Father's Day.
Oh, that's probably my favorite one.
Yeah, so I didn't really remember this, but I remembered the rest really, really well. Yeah.
Did you know that kid at the beginning is Stephen King's son,
Joe?
Joe,
yes. And now he's an accomplished author in his own right, which is cool.
Like Nosferatu and Horns.
Yeah.
Those are both really good.
So, very cool. And I just watched Night of the Creeps with Mark.
I love that movie, too.
And so, the dad is from Night of the Creeps, which is awesome. So, this movie had an $8 million budget and made $21 million at the box office, just for a little.
Yeah, and I know it was
facts.
George Romero's, I think, only one of only 2 major Hollywood productions. I mean, major, quote unquote, because there was that and Land of the Dead, right? I don't think there were any other.
Yeah, it was. So this was kind of a big deal.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know. He's talked about it in interviews and things like that about like how different it is working for a studio, but they did have a lot of freedom, and that's what I know. Tom Savini also worked on the special effects. Like, I don't know, it's just such a great combination of artists.
Yeah, it's amazing to me that they all came together. They were able to get all these people together for this, and I'm guessing the anthology setup made it easier to get everybody,
I
for
would
their
think
shooting
so.
schedules.
Yeah, I know you can build around schedule is that way for sure.
But I was very impressed with the cast. Baby Ed Harris. Like, he looks like
I know, he's so tiny. And, yeah. The woman who played Aunt Bedelia.
Yeah.
She is also in The Exorcist 3.
Oh.
And she plays a completely different... Like, in that movie, I think they came out around... They're both 80s. In that movie, Exorcist, she plays this, like, very old person who is, like, barely functional. And I forgot that it was the same actress, and I had just watched that movie, and the two characters seem like decades apart, even though it was probably like 2 or 3 years. I love it.
Wow. This first short movie, it's the short story. It's about it's Father's Day, and she comes home, and she always goes to the grave, apparently. She spills her whiskey on the grave, and that ends up waking up this corpse.
Of her abusive father?
Yeah. What would somebody spill on your grave and it would wake you up?
Oh my. Gin and tonic. Probably.
Yeah, I mean, if somebody poured Coke Zero, like, that'd probably get me
It would,
awake.
like, pull you from the grave. I love it. One thing that really strikes me right off the bat with this movie is the look, and they had such a clear vision for bringing these EC Comics type stories. Like the way the colors are, the way they have these animated frames, and like Dutch angles. A lot of it looks very artificial, and I like to think that that's on purpose.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely, it doesn't take itself so seriously that it can't get away with that. You know?
And another thing I noticed, having grown up on the VHS, it's all, cropped to 4:3, and I thought seeing it in widescreen really brings out the extra, like, a lot of the details I didn't notice before, like the different comic borders and things on different shots, and I really like that.
Yeah, definitely.
And also, so, the different, like, the family members in the first portion, when they're all hanging out, and there's, like, the brother, the really queenie one with the gold chains, and he's, like, drinking the whole time and just throwing shade on everybody. I was like, that's me when I'm 50. Like, sitting in the corner, drinking my bottle of wine and throwing in color commentary.
And you know what I was watching and I would tag as me is the dad being like, where's my cake? That's me on my birthday every year. Oh, so that guy, that character you were talking about, he finds that bottle of Jim Beam just laying there, and he takes it.
And he's just, like, drinking it, and then later on when he tries to get wine and it's empty, Speaking of Ed Harris, his, spoiler alert, death toward the end of that section is so purely, like, classic George Romero with the zombie coming out of the grave, and just... I love it so much.
I love it too. These grand plots of land with family cemeteries and everything, that's always fascinating to me. And then I was reading recently just about death and dying and ashes. Did you know you can get your ashes pressed into vinyl records now?
I did, and I want that, and I want them to press it into a copy of My Humps.
That's amazing. I was going to ask you what song, but yes. I think it's interesting. I like, the different variations of just instead of coffin in the ground. That something that I noticed, maybe not in the second one, but throughout the rest, there seems to be a lot of sort of sterile white places in this reoccurring, except for Jordy Verrill's house. It's definitely not sterile. No. But this white kitchen, it reminds me, did you see the pictures that Kanye posted of their house? Everything's white.
I'm going to be happy to say that no, I have not seen it.
You know what? Save yourself the trouble. Everything is sterile and white. There's no art on the walls, and it doesn't look like anybody lives there, let alone
no
small
set
children.
Decoration.
Yeah, it's crazy. So that reminded me of Kanye's house.
That's funny. I don't know what context this was, but I wrote, he tore her head right off.
Oh.
The mother?
I don't remember.
Because I know he makes her head into a cake.
Yeah,
he twisted it all the way around.
That's what it was.
Yeah. And then I also wrote, Richard is very upset about the wine being gone. I get it. And then I wrote, okay, he's her brother. It took me a while to figure out how he was related. Like, he was just this random sassy dude. But
right.
The ending of that one, the head cake, and just everything.
Yeah. It was so comic book.
I got my cake.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Stephen King makes this acting. It's not his debut, but he's the star.
Oh, and the Jordy Verrill.
Yeah, the only star of The Lonesome Death of Jordy Verrill. Mm-hmm. And he's actually pretty funny. I wasn't... I mean, I'm going to give him more credit maybe than his due, but he's not an actor, you know?
No, he's really not. I had written... I had always considered this one the worst one when I watched it. Although yesterday when I was watching it again, I kind of ended up changing my mind.
Okay.
It definitely took a minute to get used to how over the top his performance is, and like it's so goofy.
Yeah.
And I wrote, have you seen Tropic Thunder?
Yes.
I said, I'm not going to say it, but I think you'll know what I mean when I say that Stephen King went full on.
Yeah.
Which is why I kind of never really liked this. But if you'll forgive the pun, the ridiculousness of the character grew on me.
That's great. I was reading, George Romero gave him, his direction was act like Wile E. Coyote acts as he's falling off the cliff.
Yes!
So, you know, he
can
definitely,
tell. He really just sells it like crazy.
Yeah. And I, too, I was like, oh no, Stephen King. But he went for it.
Yeah. I think it ended up working in the end. I know that as an adult now I appreciated it a lot more.
Yeah.
The scene when he brings the meteor to the scientist guy and he wants to sell it for $200 and he's like, oh my god, $200. Yes. Oh, it was my favorite.
It is pretty funny. And I remember when I was a kid, and even now, it's disturbing to think, like, of this thing that could grow on you. And you just can't do anything about it.
Body horror is one of those things, like... when he's looking at his fingertips and they're turning green, and I'm like, oh no. That was something that I also had forgotten, and lately I've been kind of really into body horror type movies. I've been kind of revisiting Cronenberg and Lucio Fulci, and then I know I've talked about with you, like the Junji Ito manga that I've been reading, which is all just like straight body horror, and it freaks me out. Or I don't know if you've ever seen Society.
I don't think so.
Ooh, that's a good... We'll have to watch that
sometime. Yeah, I mean, the thing that's even more, like, scary about it is that the real stuff that could happen, like this flesh-eating bacteria stuff. Mm-hmm. Like, I just read about the woman in Florida, and she got in a hot tub, and it's like, no, never again.
Or, like, crocodile or whatever, I don't know if it's even real, the, like, drug that is... taking the South by storm or whatever, and it like rots people's skin off. I don't know if it's real.
Yeah.
Did you notice that when he was like drinking, it was a bottle of apple juice?
Oh, was it?
Yeah. No, he wasn't drinking like whiskey. It says apple juice on the bottle.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah. I felt really sad at the end.
I know, it is sad.
He has the worst possible luck, and then after everything goes on and you're listening to the TV, like explaining how everything that was going on in his life was like better. Suddenly prices on crops were going up, and
it was going to rain, but it was just going to spread this alien thing.
The way they filmed that too, showing the matte paintings and everything of like the wilderness being all full of the plants, I liked.
It was good. The third story, the third little vignette is Something to Tide You Over, starring Ted Danson and Leslie Nielsen.
Right?
Which
I said Ted Handsome.
Oh, yeah. Oh, my gosh. So I realized in my rewatch of Cheers that my two crushes when I was little were Ted Danson and Tom Selleck. Oh. And they were in 3 Men and a Baby together, which must have been my dream when I was younger. And it still is. They're handsome men. I mean, they were. And I remember Leslie Nielsen from, like, Airplane and stuff when I watched this at this age. So I'm like, he's a bad guy? Like, I couldn't wrap my head around it.
That was when I first saw Forbidden Planet.
Oh, okay.
I remember just being like, what? Leslie Nielsen's like 20 and he's serious. This is crazy.
Yes. So, this one, he buries him, and he's got this, like, elaborate setup with an actual extension cord to show on the video that his wife he's buried as well. There's a VHS tape, which is great. Mm-hmm. And I have a visual aid to show you, actually. Ooh. This is Mark. on vacation.
It's funny. I'm sad. I looked for the picture yesterday, but back when I used to work with the preschool with Keith,
yeah,
we did that to him.
Oh, really?
Like me and
in a sandbox
at the beach at Park Point. Me and like 20 preschoolers dug this huge pit, and he got in, and it was kind of sloped down toward him, and we buried him all the way up to his neck like that, and then the kids were like standing around this of sloped hole, and they kept like leaning over to look at him, and more sand was like going down to his like mouth.
Yeah.
And he started to freak out, and it was hilarious.
So, I have not been buried up to my neck, but tell me, what did he report? Is it hard to get out?
Not only is it hard to get out, it was very panic-inducing for him. And the lifeguards thought it was the funniest thing ever. And I don't know, if you know our friend Keith, he's awesome.
So, if you find that photo before the episode airs, I will post that, and I will also post this photo of Mark buried up to his neck.
I'll ask him.
It's funny. I mean, it is sort of like a joke thing, but I can only imagine, especially when that sand starts getting wet.
Oh,
it's just
it honestly is one of the most nightmarish ways I can think of getting killed. Like, and the way it's filmed and the way, like, I think they both put in a really good performance. I don't know if you noticed, the woman was Galen Ross.
Oh, I did.
From Dawn of the Dead.
Oh, okay.
Mm-hmm. I didn't recognize her either because she's
just on the TV screen.
She has dark hair, too. And then the only way I recognized was that, like, when she's yelling, I was like, that's the yelling of the Dawn of the Dead lady. That's then also, you may remember her as the rotating woman in the hot tub scene in Madman.
Yes. Which we have to talk about that movie sometime, too.
Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
This is also my corduroy tweet. Originated from my notes here.
I was wondering what that was
about.
I
said I think corduroy needs to make a comeback because Ted Danson is wearing like a corduroy jacket and pants, and I was like, this is actually kind of nice.
Yeah.
It's a good outfit.
I like, first of all, the sterile white environment. Again, his mansion is mostly white. Mm-hmm. And what I like about this one is that the zombies, they come back as zombies and they get their revenge. Mm-hmm. And they're creepy. I guess Ted Danson said that his daughter was on set when he was filming this one, and he kept trying to avoid her because he didn't want to scare her. Mm-hmm. And then she walked right up to him when he was in zombie makeup, and she's like, "Oh, hi, Dad." Like, she was not fazed by it.
Sounds like Vienna.
Yeah, exactly.
I noticed this particular section also, it's more light on story, but it's really heavy on build-up and suspense. Like, the whole part where Leslie Nielsen is, like, he goes to check on the beach, and everything's gone except the bucket buried. Yes. He's like, no, they're gone.
He was pulled out to sea.
They're gone. And then, they come back in this, another very classic George Romero zombie moment, although I really liked that he shot them multiple times, like, in the face, and they're still coming. Like, to me, I love movies where the zombies just cannot get killed.
Yeah. And I like that it was like green seawater kind of coming out of them.
Yeah, I can't really think of very many other movies where the zombies are just indestructible. Return of the Living Dead, I know. And that's more played for laughs. Right. So, I guess Evil Dead, the first one, I don't know. The Deadites always have very inconsistent... Like, sometimes they can die, sometimes they can be completely dismembered, and they're fine.
Yeah.
So between each one, when they show the little clips of the comics, one of them, the pages were flipping through, and it was the ads for, like, the ridiculous things you could buy from comic books. And I had purchased things from those ads before as a kid, and I wasn't sure if that was something you had ever done.
So what did you buy?
I got fart spray and these x-ray glasses.
Okay, nice.
Which did not work, sadly.
I was too young to know better. I sent away, like, the first thing I sent away for, I literally put, like, change in an envelope, and it didn't go. But I'm like, I still didn't get this thing. And my mom's like, how did you pay for it? I'm like, my quarters and pennies and stuff. She's like, oh.
Filled an envelope.
Yeah, I'm like, she's like, that, I don't know where that ended up, but it did not get sent to the company, I'm sure. So, I never sent away again, because it was a bad experience.
That's funny. I know, we used to get a lot of, like, Archie...
Yes.
And Richie Rich.
Yes.
And that was, So eventually I got into horror, and that was cool. So, the box, the crate.
Yes.
I really love this one.
Oh, me too.
Did you know, so Dexter Stanley, the character who is not the one married to Billy, the other guy, Fritz Wheeler, I was looking up his stuff on IMDb, and he was in pretty much like every anthology series throughout the 80s and 90s. He was in at least one episode, and even including the kind of like loosely anthology, like he was in the X-Files, and he was in the Friday the 13th series with my hero Roby, and the 80s Twilight Zone, and Monsters, and Tales from the Dark Side. Like, apparently he's really into it. Yeah.
And Hal Holbrook has to be one of the most lovable actors. Like, he's so, I just, like, empathetic. Like, I just feel for him. And is that Adrienne Barbeau?
Yeah, and she is such an amazing person in real life. Yes. Apparently, she's super friendly and kind, and she is so mean to him.
Yes, she's the worst. So, Adrienne Barbeau's story, she was in Carnival. Do you remember? Did you ever watch that show on HBO?
I know of it, but no.
You probably enjoy it. She was in that, and right around that time, she was doing a book signing. We didn't know, but we were in Palm Springs, and she was doing a book signing, so I went and I got her to sign a book to my parents.
So cool.
Like for their anniversary or something. But she was super nice. So it was amazing.
Yeah, I've always heard really good things, but she made Billy so insufferably awful. Oh. And his constant daydreaming about like murdering her in different ways is one of my favorite things.
Yes, it's so funny. The opening of the crate is really well shot when they open the crate for the first time, because it builds so much suspense.
And they don't show anything until he's like, something shiny. And yes. That's one thing. Just the whole movie in general, I think, keeps up the pace really well. I'll revisit that subject soon. Okay. But generally speaking, the pace is very good.
I like how, he's got this plan now. He realizes he can get rid of his wife. And he calls her or he leaves the note to come, and she loves it because he's filling it with these like gossipy details to lure her there. And she literally brings her glass of alcohol with. It's like a glass.
She shows up. Funny. And then he's like, go under the stairs and look in this box. And she's like, okay.
I know. He's like, you won't believe it. It's kind of funny. She's like, and she's so, he knows by her character that she's not going to pass up a good story to tell later. So she falls for it.
Like climbs under the crawl space, and then that whole thing where he's like shaking her and freaking out, and then the box, like, nothing happens, and she's like, what the hell is wrong with you? That moment. Just poor, sad him. And then when she finally gets hers, though, it's wonderful. I wrote, pour out a case of Virginia Slims for dead Billy.
That's good. Yeah, she's one of those characters you love to hate.
Yes.
It's really good.
I think she would be so fun to play, too, on stage.
Yeah.
Like, so much of this movie is very theatrical. Yes. As far as the acting, it's all heightened, and there were a lot of times where I was watching it and I was like, oh, this looks so much fun.
Could this be done on stage? I mean, I guess the only difficult, there's two difficult visual things, like the water thing, but you could do that somehow. And then the cockroaches, of course.
Yeah.
What else do you want to say about the crate before I talk about cockroaches?
Not a lot. I think that the the monster design is pretty neat. Just the way they keep it just hidden enough, but they show enough. I don't know. I love it. And the ending when they dump it in the water and then it pans down and the box breaks, and it's
well done. Oh, a little hidden thing I didn't see in the movie, but I read later, is that it was a nod to The Thing of John Carpenter, because the box says it's marked the Arctic, and it says it's addressed to Julie Carpenter. So,
yes, I did notice it was. I didn't realize it was a Thing reference, but I did notice that it said to Julie Carpenter, and I was like, oh, that's neat. Yeah, and I wondered if that was on purpose.
So that was cool. Okay, the final one, speaking of white sterile places, it's called They're Creeping Up on You, and it's about these cockroaches. And I read they spent 50 cents per cockroach for the real cockroaches. So they used 250,000 real cockroaches. Like, that's disgusting.
They had to have, like, I don't know if I mean, how do you control that population? Like, they must have infested the hell out of whatever they were doing.
They set up another character that you love to hate so well, because this guy is a jerk.
Yes.
And I love to see him squirm because
he's a nightmare.
Yeah. And he's so mean to everybody.
He is mean, and he's meaner than necessary.
Yes.
Like, he's constantly just berating everyone and yelling at everyone, and he's, everything's him first, and I feel like
he's blatantly racist.
And he's super blatantly racist. That was something that I never really caught before, because I'd never watched it as an adult. And yeah, he's incredibly racist. I feel like everybody knows someone kind of like him. Like, somebody that you visualize would be this guy.
Yeah.
Like, I know I had a boss once who I swear, like, I pictured her at home basically doing the same exact thing.
It's like the sense of entitlement and power is just over the top. And yeah, some people are probably like this. I recently, Meg and I were in Houston, and we went to this Mexican restaurant, and because we were both like, oh, all I want is like a cheesy plate of like enchiladas or something. Well, it was an authentic Mexican restaurant, and almost everything had bugs in it, like on purpose. Oh. It was cockroaches covered in, a sauce, and then you put that in your taco or whatever. And we were like, and then it was ants, and it was all this stuff. And we were like, oh my god, like all we want is, cheese, and there's zero cheese.
We're Minnesota people.
Yeah, like I want Taco Bell. Like I'm not cultured, okay, when it comes to that. And so I was able to find a dish to order without any bugs in it. But the woman's like, are you sure you don't want to try some of this? This is our culture. And I was like, I'm sorry. I don't want like bug legs in my mouth. Would you eat a bug?
It depends on the situation. Ugh. I watched this nature documentary where these little kids were walking through, I think, South America, and they would catch tarantulas and then roast them over the fire like marshmallows and eat them like crab. And I was like, that is horrifying, but I would totally try that.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, if you think, like, as far as that stuff, if they're big enough, it's like a crab.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, it's just, it gives me the heebie-jeebies. Oh, I'm guessing this... what do you think? Do you think this was 100% PETA approved?
That was something I was wondering myself. I need to go back and watch that documentary I was talking about. If you like Creepshow, you should pick up or find a way to watch the documentary. It's called Just Desserts, and it is about the making of Creepshow, and it's extremely good. From what I've seen, I've tried to watch it, but it's been too late at night.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, I was wondering, because, he's like spraying the cockroaches a few times, and I wondered if maybe it was just water.
Yeah.
Like, he does step on one, though, right. And so I don't know.
I mean, it was 1982, so I don't know, like, when stuff started getting more strict with that.
Yeah, I forgot to pay attention to the credits to see if any
animals were harmed. The bugs crawling out of him at the end has to be one of the best moments ever. It's so satisfying because he's such a jerk, and to see that, like, disgusting. And this room that he sealed himself into because he thinks he's safe, and it's just filled. He could be swimming in them in there.
That's horrifying.
Oh, and the song at the end on the jukebox is the same song from Evil Dead.
Okay. I knew I recognized the song, and I'm kind of embarrassed that I didn't realize that was the one.
And then Tom Savini gets his little cameo as the garbage man in the very last scene before we see the voodoo doll has been purchased and the son is getting his revenge on his dad.
I love that when he's stabbing it and the dad's like, my dad. Have you seen the sequel?
I haven't, but I see that it's available.
Yes, I have that movie, and it is definitely not as good, but it is very good. It's, I think, 4 stories instead of the 5 in this one. I didn't count.
Okay.
And it is also written by Stephen King. It's not directed by George Romero, but I think he had some involvement, like as a producer or something.
Okay.
And then Tom Savini is the creep in that one.
Oh.
Yeah, he like hangs out in the back of this truck and like throws comic books out. I don't quite remember. Something like that. But one of the shorts in it is based on a Stephen King story called The Raft, and I don't know. I'd recommend number 2.
Yeah,
there is a third one floating around too, but it's one of those like unofficial crap movies.
Yeah.
Sorry, whoever made that.
They're shedding a tear right now.
I'm sure.
I was thinking of that scene in The Simpsons when Lisa's like giving the professional baseball players a hard time or something, and then they're like, "Oh, they don't care. They've got tough skin," and the baseball player's like crying on the field. I think it was Daryl Strawberry. That's back in the day. Oh, the voodoo doll thing. I just saw on ClickHole this morning. It was like a witch has a voodoo doll of somebody, but she's giving it a massage. And she's like using lotion and stuff. And it's like, aw, this is kind of nice.
That is nice. I like it.
Yes.
Creepshow. It's a great movie.
We need to rank. Should we rank each little story, or should we rank the movie as a whole?
I was trying to figure that out. Like yesterday, I started writing like, this one's my favorite, this one's my second favorite, but by the end I really was having a hard time with it. But I think maybe comment on each one.
Yeah. So the first little story, Father's Day. What did you think? How did you end up from what you went in and how you left?
Still that Father's Day is probably my favorite one.
Okay.
For me, I think it's the most like structurally, and the pacing, everything about it is done really well. I like that one the best. I know that my least favorite is probably the Upson Pratt one at the end. I don't know if it's just because it's at the end, and by then it's been so long. Like, I don't know. It just, by then it always feels like it's starting to drag for me.
Oh, okay.
And I know when I was younger, I would like always fall asleep by the time that one came on.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's not bad though. It's kind of like when I say Aliens is my least favorite Alien movie, like it's still good, like fantastic. Yeah.
I think The Crate is my favorite, just because of that whole story setup, that structure, the acting.
That's
the
a close,
and I really like what is the
all the performances.
Oh, Something to Tide You Over. The being buried in the sand one. There's something about that one, too, that just really got me as a kid. And still, like, if somebody did that. Because there are bad guys in the world that could harm you.
I'd hope that I could come back as a zombie.
Yes.
Get my revenge. There's really none that I don't like. Like, Jordy Verrill, I think, is probably the most difficult, like, the most inaccessible, as far as if you're not really in the mood, or, like, if you're not appreciative of what they're going for, then it might come off as like way too over the top. But that one has some of my favorite visuals of all of them. When he's laying there covered in plants and the whole room is just full of it. And
you just that one scene when he's not quite all the way covered, but his eyes are still visible, and just his terror. That surprised me. I think that one's the one that surprised me the most, because I didn't dislike it as much as I thought I would, or as I remembered. That was definitely me too. Starting that one, I was like, oh, this one I have to get through. But then by the end of it, I was like, oh no, I ended up really liking it by the end. But like I said, I think rating each one or like ranking them is almost impossible, because I think they're all really good. It's just kind of, I'd be curious to know how the movie would play, like switching up the order of some of them. Like personally, I would probably put the Father's Day last, because I think that one ends on such a like a bang with the birthday cake and everybody's just freaking out, or possibly The Crate. Like I feel like those are both, the endings are so strong that ending with that one would be really good. I would probably put the cockroach one first or second. Yeah, I think if they move that up, it might. For me, anyway, play a little better. I'm curious why they chose to end with that one. Because I don't think it is the strongest, and I feel like you would want to bookend, you know, an anthology. But anyway. Oh, one other thing I read about and I didn't notice on the rewatch was that ashtray that they use in the first one that's very prominent, because they kill somebody with it, is used in every single movie, or in every single little short. Like in the second one, I guess Jordy Verrill has it in his house somewhere. It's also in Leslie Nielsen's house. It must be somewhere and hidden in that white Serena house at the end. And then in the crate, it's also in the house.
That's cool. I didn't know that. I made a really ridiculous video with some friends in high school, and it was like sketch things, and we had a pen that was in every single one.
That's awesome.
Learning from the greats early on.
Yes. So it was a nice little thing to tie them all together, besides the comic book theme, of course.
So overall, I guess, how would you rank the movie?
So if I was going to give it between a 0 and 10, and I'm going to use, what should we use?
Horror stories.
Okay, horror stories. I think I would give it, and this is hard because it's like I would rank them differently, but I'm going to give it like a 7.
That's probably what I would say too. Yeah, I mean, if you're going objectively based on like overall.
Yeah. Because some I would give a 9, some I would give a 6, you know.
Yeah,
so
that's how I feel.
I'll probably give it a 7.
I'd say 7. I would say it's a 7, but still considered like a classic and a must-watch.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So.
And speaking of anthologies, like the other anthology that really sticks in my mind is the Twilight Zone anthology, and I haven't seen that streaming anywhere. Do you own it?
Have you seen the movie? Yeah, I do own it.
Yeah. Why would I even ask? Which movie? Twilight Zone, the movie?
The movie.
Oh, yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
With like Dan Aykroyd at the beginning.
Yes.
And
there's a gremlin on
the wing, but it's... Oh, I'm so bad at this. The guy from Third Rock from the Sun instead of William... Yeah, John Lithgow instead of William Shatner in that one. And I like that one a lot.
That one's so good. And the one that stuck with me when I was a kid, it's like some sort of house, and it's really creepy. The kid is going through the house, and...
Oh, yeah! Wait.
Is that a Twilight Zone movie, or what is that one from?
Might be... I don't know. This could be a couple different things.
Yeah. So, anyway, we're going to seek that out and watch that, too. But, creepy. You should comment and tell us what your favorite horror anthology is or are, and... We're always looking for recommendations. Do you have other recommendations?
For horror anthologies?
Yeah, or anything you've watched recently or anything?
Well, just because it's in my head, anthologies. The original Amicus Tales from the Crypt, from the 70s, is really good. It's completely unlike any other version of Tales from the Crypt you might know, although it does cover some of the same stories that the show did, which I really enjoyed. The other probably favorite one, Black Sabbath. I don't know if you're familiar with that one. It's Italian, and there are 2 different edits. There's an American edit, or an international, and then the Italian edit, and they rearrange the order of the stories. And then one of them, they actually completely changed the plot in the dubbing and the editing.
Oh my gosh.
It was very controversial because it has a lesbian.
Oh.
So they changed it in the American version. But yeah, Black Sabbath, and I honestly would recommend watching both versions because they're very good. So
something I would recommend, I don't think we've talked about it thoroughly on the podcast, is the Friday the 13th TV series.
Oh!
Because it's not what you expect.
Hashtag damn it, Roby.
Yeah, it's not Jason killing somebody every week. It's actually more what they wanted to do with the movie series originally is creepy things happening. And they do haunted objects, and they're out to find and collect these haunted objects. And it's so good!
Yeah, the cousins inherit the antique store from their uncle, and he had sold his soul to the devil and sold all these cursed objects, and they have to go out and find them all. And Roby... So Roby is the woman who plays Mickey, the lead female character.
And she just goes by Roby. And she has a music video.
Sure does.
So you need to watch that too.
She's pretty amazing. She married some...
Like a prince or something?
Something like that. Like some kind of royalty. Duke.
A duke,
I think.
Okay.
And then I think they're divorced now. But she was the Duchess of something for a long time. So anyway.
That's the best. So check that out. I remember when it was airing like every weekday at like 10 a.m. on Sci-Fi. Like the days before you could find it anywhere.
When it was the Sci-Fi channel?
Yes, when it was actually Sci-Fi. And spelled correctly. And I had my VHS set every morning. My
mom would always record it, and I would watch with her. Yeah. Just the episode with the doll really sticks out. And then there's one where they travel back in time.
Yes, I remember this. Yes. I haven't rewatched it in a long time. But do you own it now?
I do.
That's awesome. Yeah. Is it on Blu-ray?
No, you can get the DVD of that for like $30 now I know on Amazon. I think I got mine at Best Buy.
Nice.
Along with Tales from the Dark Side. They were both released kind of at the same time.
Very cool. And speaking also of anthology, one of the next movies Nate and I are going to watch is Demon Knight, based on Tales from the Crypt. Mm-hmm. So, yay! We hope you have an excellent week, Horror Rewind listeners.
Keep it spooky.
Yeah, and until next time, we'll see you in the horror section.
Bye.